Now God's people were in the land of the Nile. In fact, they'd been there quite some while. The new Pharaoh of Egypt began to rant and rave. There's too many Hebrews, make each one a slave. They set them to work building cities and walls, grand palaces, pyramids and decorative halls. If they stopped or they slowed or even if they slipped, the taskmasters didn't hesitate. The Hebrews were whipped. The numbers were growing. There seemed more and more. Pharaoh, still worried, had horror in store. Throw the Hebrew male babies into the Nile. We'll feed them all to the crocodile. A lady called Jochebed wasn't having that. An ark of bulrushes she did carefully plait. She covered it in pitch to keep out the water, placed her baby in the reeds, guarded by her daughter. As part of God's plan, certainly not by chance, Pharaoh's daughter came to bathe and gave a glance. The boy was discovered, he'd be killed maybe. But Pharaoh's daughter chose to love the baby. Miriam, his sister, said, "I'll call for a maid." In God's wonderful plan, Jochebed would be paid to bring up her son, who should have died in those days. She told him of God and taught him his ways. When Moses was older, he went to the palace. He ate the best food, he drank from a chalice. He rode in a chariot, he saw cruelty to slaves. It really angered him when they beat them with staves. A taskmaster he killed one day in his rage. Moses was convinced no one knew at this stage. Then with two Hebrews he intervened in a fight. It was apparent they knew. He soon took to flight. He spent 40 years in the desert, earning his keep, spending each day herding his father-in-law's sheep. One night he noticed a bush that was burning. It never went out. This was quite concerning. Moses, being quite an inquisitive bloke, took a closer look. Then the bush, it spoke. The voice, it was God's. He had a directive. God showed Moses his power. It was quite effective. Moses went back to the Egyptian royal court. "Let us go to the desert. Please, don't abort. If you say no, you'll stand in God's face. He'll bring misery, punishment, right to this place." Pharaoh stood against God. Now he had been warned. First the rivers turned to blood, and the flies, they swarmed. There were lice and frogs, hailstorms and disease, which eventually brought Pharaoh to his knees. But each and every time he said, "You can go." He'd see half-finished palaces, and then he'd say no. There was no choice. There would be one more plague. Moses gave instructions, and he wasn't vague. If the oldest son in each house would be spared, do as God required, no need to be scared. Lamb's blood was to be painted on the doorpost and lintel. It did seem strange, but it was obedience's symbol. It pointed to Jesus, the Lamb sent from above, who would die on the cross to show us God's love. The Hebrews, they left Egypt that day, and we'll go to heaven if we will obey.